She sat in the exam hall again, her hands trembling, her eyes fixed on the paper in front of her. The room was silent except for the scratching of pens and the ticking of the clock, but inside her chest was a storm. Amelia Harrington, daughter of one of the wealthiest billionaires in the city, had failed every single test she had taken this semester. It didn't matter how many tutors her father hired, or how many resources were placed at her fingertips, every result came back the same, red ink, big letters, failed. To the world, Amelia had everything, beauty, wealth, privilege, a name that opened doors. But inside, she carried the weight of shame and the echo of her father's disappointment. Amelia, how is it possible that with every tutor I hire, with every resource I provide, you still fail? Harringtons do not fail, her father thundered one evening in his office, his voice echoing off the marble walls. She wanted to explain, to tell him that her mind didn't work the way people expected, that numbers floated away, that letters swirled until they made no sense. But she couldn't. Her voice always disappeared in front of him. So instead, she ran, her expensive shoes clicking against the hallways until she found her sanctuary, the janitor's room in the back of the school. It was there she met Daniel. He was sweeping when she stumbled in, her face streaked with tears. Daniel was a single dad, working 2 jobs just to provide for his little boy. His life was hard, filled with late nights and early mornings, but his eyes carried something Amelia had never seen before, gentleness without judgment. "Rough day?" he asked, his voice steady, his broom pausing. She nodded, too embarrassed to speak. She wasn't used to being seen as anything other than the billionaire's daughter. Over the next few days, Amelia kept finding excuses to stop by. At first, it was just to escape the pressure, but Daniel listened. He didn't try to fix her or lecture her. He listened when she admitted she was terrified of numbers. He nodded when she confessed she felt stupid, even though the world expected brilliance from her. One day, she finally broke down and whispered, "Maybe I'll never be enough." Daniel set his broom aside and sat across from her. "Do you know what the most powerful number is?" he asked. She shook her head, confused. "0, he said with a smile. "Because it means a new start. Everything begins at 0. Even me. When my wife walked out on us, I had nothing. No money, no hope, no plan. Just 0. But that 0 pushed me to start over, and now I've got my boy, and he thinks I'm a hero. Failing doesn't mean the end, Amelia. It just means you're at 0, and that's where the real story begins." Those words planted a seed in her heart. For the first time, failure didn't feel like a prison. It felt like a doorway. Daniel offered to help her, not as a tutor but as someone who understood what it meant to struggle. They sat on the dusty floor of the janitor's room with broken pencils and scraps of paper. He taught her slowly, starting from 0, with patience no expensive tutor had ever shown. He drew silly pictures to explain math problems, told her stories to make history stick, and most importantly, he never once made her feel small. As weeks passed, Amelia's confidence grew. Her grades didn't skyrocket overnight, but something more important happened. She began to believe she could learn. She stopped running from her mistakes and started embracing them. Every wrong answer became just another step from 0 upward. Daniel's son, little Max, often joined them, sitting cross-legged on the floor, cheering Amelia on as though she were his big sister. The laughter in that tiny janitor's room was more precious than all the chandeliers and mansions her father owned. But word soon spread. One of the teachers caught Amelia sneaking into the janitor's room and reported it to her father. Furious, Mr. Harrington stormed into the school one evening, only to find his daughter sitting on the floor with Daniel and his son, smiling as she solved a math problem. "Amelia," he barked, his face red. "Do you realize how humiliating this is? Sitting with a janitor as though you were one of them?" Amelia froze, the old fear returning. But then she remembered Daniel's words, 0 means a new start. She stood up, trembling but determined. "Dad, he's the only one who ever believed in me. He's the one who taught me that failing isn't the end. You always told me Harringtons don't fail, but you're wrong. Failing is how we learn to start again. I'd rather be here at 0 with them than up in your tower pretending to be perfect." For the first time, her father had no words. He looked at his daughter, at the janitor, at the little boy, and something inside him shifted. He realized that all his money, all his expectations, had only crushed her spirit. But this man with nothing had given her back her hope. In the weeks that followed, Mr. Harrington reluctantly allowed Amelia to continue learning with Daniel. Slowly, he began to see the changes himself, her laughter returned, her eyes lit up when she spoke, and her test scores began to climb. She wasn't perfect, but she no longer feared imperfection. She was learning how to live, not just how to pass. Months later, Amelia stood in front of her class, holding her test with a passing grade, not perfect, but hers. The same girl who had failed every exam now smiled with pride. Daniel and Max were in the back row, clapping the loudest. And when she walked out of that hall, her father stood waiting, tears glistening in his eyes. He pulled her into his arms and whispered, "I'm proud of you, Amelia. Not because you passed, but because you didn't give up." And that was the moment she understood, life isn't about avoiding failure, it's about embracing 0, about starting over as many times as it takes. So to everyone watching this, maybe you failed, maybe you've fallen, maybe the world has told you you're not enough. But remember what Daniel told Amelia, 0 isn't the end. It's the beginning. Start again, believe again, rise again. Because even from 0, you can climb higher than you ever imagined. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that remind us we're never truly alone on this journey. Amelia Harrington was born into a life where failure wasn't just frowned upon, it was unthinkable. From the time she could walk, she was told that her name carried a weight, that her father's empire rested not just on his shoulders, but on hers too. Every step she took had to be perfect, every word flawless, every grade at the top of the list. And yet, here she was, 17 years old, with a string of failed tests that mocked her every effort. It wasn't that Amelia didn't try. She studied late into the night with the best tutors money could buy. She had access to resources most students would dream of: the libraries, technology, even private lectures from university professors. But the more she studied, the more the words swam on the page. Numbers twisted themselves into shapes that didn't make sense, and history dates blurred together until they became meaningless. No one seemed to understand that her brain worked differently, not worse, just different. Her father, Charles Harrington, the billionaire tycoon who had built his fortune from scratch, couldn't comprehend it. To him, every problem had a solution, every weakness a price tag. If Amelia failed, it meant she wasn't working hard enough. And that thought was intolerable to him. Do you even realize how embarrassing this is? Charles's voice boomed across his oak-paneled office one evening as he slammed her test results onto the desk. Every newspaper, every partner, every school official knows you're my daughter. Do you think they will respect a Harrington who can't even pass high school exams? Amelia's throat closed. She wanted to scream that she wasn't stupid, that she was trying, that she wasn't defined by a letter on a piece of paper. But the words died in her chest. She had spent her whole life being told to be silent unless she had the right answer. So she stayed quiet, tears burning behind her eyes. Go to your room, her father barked. Tomorrow, I'll have another tutor for you. Someone better. And like that, he dismissed her. Amelia fled, her expensive shoes clattering against the marble floor, but the further she went, the heavier her chest became. She didn't want another tutor. She didn't want another lecture. She wanted someone who understood what it felt like to drown in expectations. By the time she reached the back of the school building, her tears were spilling freely. She pushed open the heavy door of the janitor's closet without thinking, slipping inside the dim little room filled with the faint scent of cleaning supplies. It was there she met Daniel. He looked up from where he was mopping, his brown hair damp with sweat.